Hello, this is Whispers in the Rain. Welcome to tonight's scary story reading. One to keep you company as the storm rolls in. Comment where you're listening from and what time it is where you are. Let the rain drown the noise of the outside world, and let the darkness take over from here. Whispers from the Attic. The old farmhouse had been in Eliza's family for over a century, but no one had lived there in decades. When she inherited it from a great aunt she'd never met, the only thing she remembered hearing was, "Don't go in the attic." It had always struck her as odd. Why only the attic? Still, with her lease ending in the city and the cost of living skyrocketing, the idea of a rent-free escape seemed too good to pass up. So, she packed up her books, her cat Jasper, and drove 5 hours into the rolling countryside to find a place that smelled like wood rot and old wallpaper paste. The house stood alone, swallowed by a line of crooked trees and tall yellow grass that bowed in the wind. Its bones were gray and bowed with age. The paint peeled like sunburned skin, and the windows watched her arrival with smeared, opaque stares. Inside, the air was cool and stale. Her footsteps echoed on the hardwood floors. The place was dusty but intact. Furniture covered in moth-eaten sheets, walls lined with faded photos of people with grim expressions, eyes slightly too large, mouths caught in unfinished smiles. She avoided the attic door on the first day, but on the second night, she heard it. A whisper, faint and trembling, coming from above. Not words, not quite. More like a breath speaking in reverse. Eliza sat up in bed, heart thudding in her chest. Jasper, curled beside her, lifted his head, ears twitching. He'd heard it too. The sound had come again, soft like parchment tearing in the wind, but laced with breath. It drifted down from the ceiling, where the pull string to the attic hatch swayed gently, as if recently touched. She reached for her phone on the nightstand. 2:13 nachts. Too late for a logical explanation. Too early for it to be anything but real. Eliza, the whisper didn't come again, but she was certain she'd heard her name. Not loudly, not even in a voice she recognized. But the way it unfurled, like an exhale carrying her name out of the dark, made her skin prickle. She turned on the bedside lamp. Jasper bolted off the bed and stared up at the ceiling, tail twitching. "Old house," she muttered, trying to calm herself. "Airflow. Pipes. Settling wood." But even as she spoke the words, her voice sounded weak, like a child reciting a charm to keep monsters away. Gathering her courage, Eliza stood and stepped into the hallway. The house groaned around her like a sleeping beast. Her bare feet padded softly over the wooden floorboards toward the attic hatch. The string hung perfectly still now, dead center in the hallway. There was no draft, no sign of disturbance. She stared at the hatch above, half expecting it to creak open on its own. But it didn't. Just silence now. Heavy swallowing. Then, tap, tap, tap. A slow, deliberate knocking from above. She bolted back to her bedroom, slammed the door, and shoved a chair beneath the knob. Eliza didn't sleep for the rest of the night. She sat in bed with the lamp on, watching the door, listening to every creak and rustle the house offered. Jasper had crawled beneath the dresser and refused to come out, his eyes wide and fixed on the ceiling above. By morning, the silence returned like a spell lifted. Sunlight filtered through her lace curtains, painting soft golden patterns on the floor. The world outside chirped with birdsong, but the house itself remained quiet, waiting. She made coffee and tried to reason with herself. Maybe it was just the stress. Maybe she'd imagined the whisper. But the knocking? That was harder to explain. The attic had always been off limits in family stories. Her father once told her, when she was little, that the house held memories better left untouched. Some places keep things, he said. Some things don't like being forgotten. At the time, she thought he was trying to scare her. Now, those words echoed like a warning. She decided to investigate. Not the attic itself. Not yet, but the rest of the house. Maybe something had fallen. Maybe an animal had gotten in. Something logical. She started with the library. The room smelled of mildew and time. Dust floated in the air, disturbed by her presence. Old books lined the shelves, tomes bound in cracked leather and strange titles. One, resting oddly on a pedestal near the window, drew her attention. It was a journal. She opened it. July 3rd, 1931. She came again last night. Whispered through the boards. Call me by name. She knows I'm listening now. Eliza's breath caught in her throat. Another entry. July 6th, 1931. I locked the attic. She still speaks. She never forgives. Eliza closed the book slowly, hands trembling. The house hadn't forgotten. It was remembering her. The journal's pages were yellowed and brittle, but the ink remained bold, etched deep like confessions pressed into skin. Eliza read on, entranced and unsettled. The writer never signed their name, but the entries grew more frantic as the days passed. July 10th, 1931. I heard her crying. Not a woman, not anymore. Like a mouth full of broken teeth. July 12th. She scratched at the walls last night. I don't think I'm the first she's come for. I found the locket. It still had hair in it. Eliza slammed the book shut and stepped back. Her reflection in the library's dusty glass case startled her. Eyes wide, skin pale. She clutched the book to her chest and left the room, locking the door behind her, as if that could contain whatever she disturbed. She avoided the attic the rest of the day, keeping to the lower floor. But even as she cleaned and tried to settle in, she felt the house watching her. Every hallway seemed longer than it should be. Every shadow lingered too long. That night, sleep came reluctantly. She curled in bed with Jasper at her side, lamp still glowing. She told herself she wouldn't look at the attic door again. She wouldn't even step into the hall. But just past 2 a.m., the whisper returned. This time it was clearer. Eliza, it was right above her. Not muffled, not distant. It was as if the ceiling had lungs and was breathing her name into the plaster. She held her breath, eyes locked on the ceiling fan. It wasn't spinning. The air was still. The only motion came from the string hanging from the attic door, now swinging gently back and forth. And then, thud, something heavy landed directly above her. Jasper hissed. Eliza screamed. She stumbled out of bed, dragging Jasper with her. The ceiling groaned again. Another thud, slower this time, like something crawling just above. She stared up in horror as faint scratches followed, trailing across the boards like claws on old bone. She didn't want to go into the hallway, but staying beneath the attic felt worse. She crept out, hugging Jasper to her chest, feet barely making a sound as she backed away from the swinging string. It moved like a pendulum now, slow and rhythmic, as though being pushed by an unseen hand. She didn't dare touch it. Instead, she raced to the downstairs bathroom, flicked on the light, and locked the door behind her. She slid down the wall and sat on the cool tile floor, trying to steady her breathing. Jasper meowed once, softly, like he, too, knew something ancient stirred above them. The bathroom had no windows, no vents, just a mirror and yellowed wallpaper. She felt safe there, as if the thing above couldn't slip through tiles or crawl through reflections. Still, her ears strained for sound. For a time, all was silent. Then the whisper came again, but this time from inside the bathroom. Eliza, it came from the mirror. She turned to look, and the breath caught in her lungs. Her reflection stared back, but slightly wrong, the eyes just a little darker, the smile forming where her lips had been still. Her mirrored self whispered again, "Don't leave me here." Eliza backed against the door, horror blooming in her chest. Jasper clawed at the handle, yowling now. The mirror flickered like heat haze bending the glass. And then the reflection was normal again. Her own face, pale and wide-eyed. But on the wall behind her reflection, where no one should have been, a figure stood. Thin, dressed in a dark, rotting nightgown. She didn't turn around. She ran. Eliza burst from the bathroom, Jasper clinging to her shoulder, his claws digging into her skin. She didn't stop to look behind her. She couldn't. The hallway seemed to warp around her as she ran, lights flickering above like the house was breathing with her panic. She didn't stop until she reached the kitchen. It was grounded, more real than the rest of the house. Sunlight had touched it earlier. There were still dishes in the sink. Reality clung to it like a thin film. She dropped to her knees, gasping, Jasper bolting under the table. Her hand trembled as she picked up her phone. No signal. No internet. The bars flickered once, then vanished. She slammed the phone on the table. No, no, this isn't happening. I'm not staying here. Her voice cracked, too loud in the stillness. She reached for her keys, left on the counter. Or so she thought. They were gone. She turned every drawer, every pocket in her bag, checked the floor, even the sink. Nothing. That's when she saw the note, folded neatly beside the dusty toaster, written in careful, elegant script that she hadn't written. We're in the attic. We're waiting. Eliza felt ice crawl down her spine. The note hadn't been there before. She backed away, nearly tripping over Jasper. She glanced up the stairs. The attic door was still closed, but the string had vanished. No more pull rope. Just the square hatch sealed tight into the ceiling like a wound that had scabbed over. She remembered something from a journal. She knows I'm listening now. Eliza was no longer just a visitor. She had heard them. And now they knew she was listening. Eliza refused to go upstairs again that day. She stayed in the kitchen, huddled on the floor with Jasper beside her, flipping through the journal like it might hold a way out. The entries turned more erratic, with smears of ink where the writer's hand had trembled. July 14th, 1931. She left something in my room. I didn't see it at first. I stepped on it in the dark. It whispered when I touched it. July 16th. There's a second voice now. A man, I think. But it's broken, like a phonograph stuck on a dying note. Eliza's eyes burned. She needed to sleep, but fear had rooted deep into her spine. She considered driving away, but without keys or a working phone, it meant braving the attic where she now suspected the keys had been taken. Lured like bait into a trap. That night, the whisper came earlier, around midnight. This time, more insistent. Eliza, come see. It chanted in a wet, breathy rhythm that mimicked a lullaby, the melody just out of tune. She stuffed her ears with tissue and curled beneath her blanket, whispering to herself like a prayer. Don't listen. Don't listen. Don't listen. But the house wanted her to hear. Even with muffled ears, the whispers crawled in, beneath skin, in a bone. They began to speak as if right beside her. We've missed you. You remember us. She's waiting. Jasper shrieked and tore across the room, hiding again. Eliza could feel her sanity fraying like twine pulled tight. She couldn't take another night like this. So at dawn, with the sky barely gray, she climbed the stairs. This time, the attic door was open, just a crack. Enough for the dark to peek out and breathe on her face. And from within, the sound of something rocking. Eliza stood frozen before the half-open attic door. The rocking continued, a steady, creaking rhythm that seemed to echo from another time. She reached out, fingertips brushing the wooden hatch. It was colder than the rest of the house, as if it had been sealed away from heat and light for years. Jasper mewed softly behind her, tail bristled, eyes wide. Eliza pulled the door open. A wave of dust cascaded down, followed by the attic ladder, unfolding with a reluctant groan. It stretched downward like a bony limb, inviting her up. She grabbed a flashlight from the hallway drawer, took a deep breath, and ascended. Each rung creaked under her weight. The darkness above seemed alive, shifting around the weak beam of her flashlight. As her head crested the attic floor, the first thing she saw was the rocking chair. It sat in the center of the attic, facing away from her, moving back and forth, back and forth. Empty. She stepped up into the attic fully. The air was thick, heavy with the smell of mothballs and something older, like damp fabric and long-dead flowers. Cardboard boxes and old trunks surrounded her like silent sentinels. The rocking chair kept moving, steady and slow. Then it stopped. Eliza, the whisper came from the far corner, where shadows gathered like a pool of ink. She swung the flashlight around. No one there. But something had moved. She backed toward the opening, the beam trembling in her hands. Then the light caught something shiny, a glint of metal atop a weather box. Her car keys. She ran to them, grabbed them, heart pounding. But as she turned to leave, the attic door slammed shut behind her. The flashlight flickered, then died. The whisper was no longer soft. It was all around her. Pitch black swallowed her. The attic had no windows, no slivers of moonlight to soften its darkness. It was a tomb of silence and breath, and Eliza was trapped inside it. She scrambled for her phone, fumbling with cold, shaking fingers. The screen glowed dimly. Low battery, 5%. She turned on the flashlight, and the attic walls sprang into flickering, haunted relief. The rocking chair was empty now. Still, she turned in slow circles, heart thudding, trying to remember the ladder's position. The space around her felt unfamiliar now, impossibly wider. Boxes that hadn't been there before now loomed, casting long, twitching shadows. Then she saw it. Something in the far corner moved. At first, it looked like part of the wall. But as her light flickered, the shape peeled away. A figure hunched low, arms too long, wrapped around its knees. Long gray hair spilled down a face she couldn't yet see. It rocked back and forth, and it whispered, "Eliza." The voice sounded like her own, but twisted, as though spoken underwater and stitched together from different mouths. Eliza stepped back, bumping into a low trunk. Her phone slipped from her hand and clattered to the floor. The light cut out. Darkness fell again, heavy and absolute. She dropped to her knees, groping for the phone. Her fingers brushed something soft, a small bundle wrapped in cloth. It shifted. A child's voice whimpered from inside it. Not words, just a breathy, broken sob. Her hand recoiled in terror. She stood quickly and backed away, knocking into another trunk. This one burst open, releasing a sour stench and a sudden flood of air that sounded like a sigh. Dozens of old porcelain doll heads spilled out, their glass eyes rolling, watching her. Behind her, the whisper returned, louder, urgent. "Eliza, we remember you. We were yours." Then a hand, cold and papery, closed over her wrist. Eliza screamed and wrenched her arm free, stumbling backward into the pitch. Her foot struck the edge of a loose board, and she went down hard, landing on her side with a breathless thud. The air felt thicker now, humid and suffocating, as if the attic itself had inhaled her. Around her, the whispers began to layer, different voices now. Men, women, children, all whispering her name like a chant, some pleading, others laughing in broken, hiccuping giggles. Eliza, come see what you left behind. You remember, don't you?" She managed to grab her phone. Its flashlight flickered weakly, then steadied. When the beam lifted, she saw them. Figures lined the attic walls. Dozens of them, translucent, barely formed, like smoke trapped in skin. Some crouched, others swayed gently. All turned toward her, their faces no eyes. Just dark, sunken hollows and mouths open too wide, whispering. At their center stood the rocking woman. She had risen. Her nightgown was a faded, rotted gray, stitched with long tears. Her skin was parchment thin and sagging in unnatural ways, like something that had hung too long in a basement. Her face was hidden by the veil of white hair, until she slowly looked up. Eliza's knees buckled. The woman's eyes were hers. Not metaphorically, not figuratively. The exact same eyes. Same shade, same shape. Looking out from that ancient face, the woman whispered, "You left us, Eliza." Eliza trembled. I've never been here before." "But you have," the woman interrupted. "Before the walls were plaster. Before the names were written down. You promised to remember." The whisperers closed in. The attic groaned beneath her, as if shifting to trap her forever. "We've waited so long," the woman whispered again. "Now it's your turn." And the floor beneath Eliza split open. Eliza plunged downward. The boards gave way like wet paper, and she crashed through darkness into an impossible place. She should have landed in the hallway beneath the attic, but instead, she found herself standing in a room she didn't recognize. Not her house, not anywhere she remembered. It was dimly lit by a dozen oil lamps on the walls. No windows, just cracked plaster and peeling wallpaper, patterned with faded roses that twisted like vines. The air buzzed with a low hum, as if the walls themselves were whispering in too low a frequency for her ears to fully catch. She was standing on an old rug, threadbare, stained with dark patches she didn't want to inspect too closely. The furniture was antique, a velvet settee, a child's crib, a mirror propped against the wall with a dusty shroud draped over it. Jasper was gone, so were her phone and flashlight. She stood slowly, heart hammering, every nerve screaming for her to run, but there were no doors, no windows, just a staircase, impossibly narrow, spiraling downward into shadow. Something moved at the edge of her vision. She spun. The shrouded mirror twitched. The cloth covering it fluttered, though no breeze stirred. Then a voice called out, not a whisper this time. A clear voice. A child. Eliza. Her breath caught. It sounded exactly like her own voice at age 7. She stepped toward the mirror. The cloth slid away on its own, pooling to the floor like a discarded skin. In the mirror, she saw herself young, kneeling in the attic of a different house, holding something small in her hands. Ayah! And inside, something that moved. I had to keep them safe, the child Eliza said, not looking up. I promised. Behind the little girl, shadowy figures watched. Waiting, the real Eliza reached for the glass, and the girl looked up at her, face blank, eyes full of mirrors. You left us here, Eliza. You buried the jar. You locked the attic. And you forgot. Eliza staggered back from the mirror, her breath catching in her throat. The child version of herself didn't vanish. Instead, she stepped forward, pressing both palms flat against the inside of the glass, her expression unreadable. You buried the jar beneath the floorboards, the girl repeated, voice hollow. But the voices don't stay buried. You knew that. I don't remember. Eliza cried. I've never. This isn't real. But deep inside her, something shifted. A flicker. A fragment. The attic of her grandmother's house. The scratch of wood beneath her knees. Her small hands gripping a glass jar. A whisper not outside, but inside the jar. She had sealed something away. Something that had been begging. I didn't understand what it was, she whispered. The girl in the mirror smiled, faintly. But you promised. You said, I'll come back. I'll let you out when it's safe. Eliza shook her head, backing away. That wasn't me. That was you. The girl snapped louder now. You left us here. You locked us in. You forgot. And now we're remembering you. The mirror cracked, a jagged web splitting from the center. The girl's image broke, becoming a dozen shifting, shrieking versions of herself. Laughing, crying, whispering in time. The floor began to tremble. The staircase behind Eliza groaned, beckoning. A distant scream rose from the depths below. It was her mother's voice, or maybe her grandmother's, or maybe her own, twisted with age and pain. Eliza turned to the staircase, legs trembling. The mirror behind her shattered completely, and then the walls began to close in, not physically, but visibly, as if the entire room were exhaling slowly, pressing her toward the descent. With no other choice, she stepped onto the stairs. They swallowed the light behind her. The staircase seemed endless. With each step downward, Eliza noticed the walls pressing closer. At first narrow, then claustrophobic. The wallpaper changed. No longer roses, but crude childlike drawings, scratched in charcoal and something darker. Stick figures with twisted limbs, heads turned backward, mouths stretched wide. One figure appeared again and again, a girl with long black hair and blank white eyes. Eliza, a whisper called ahead, soft and trembling. You said we could come back with you. She froze. Something moved just around the corner of the stairs, too quick to see clearly, but unmistakably human-shaped. No, Eliza muttered, gripping the railing. I was a child. I didn't know what I was doing. The stairwell sighed in response, as if the house disagreed. Another few steps, and she came upon a landing. A door stood at its center, old, iron-handled, splintered with age. Carved into it were dozens of names, etched violently. Some she didn't recognize. Some she did. Her own name was there. 3 times. One scratched faintly. One deeper, like with a nail. One burned in. She hesitated, then opened the door. Beyond it was a long corridor. The walls were lined with glass jars, hundreds of them, maybe more, each one pulsing with something inside. Tiny shapes, twisting shadows, fragments of whispers pressed against the glass like ghosts trying to breathe. Eliza walked slowly, the jars flickering to life as she passed. Some whispered names, some shrieked. Then she came to a familiar jar. It was smaller than the others, cracked slightly at the rim. Inside it, a single eye floated. Blue, exactly like hers. It blinked. Eliza stumbled back. The whisper came again from all around. "Let us out. Then, or take our place." The corridor shook violently. Jars began to shatter down the hall behind her. One, then three, then dozens. And from the broken glass, they began to crawl free. The things pouring from shattered jars weren't fully formed. Some slithered, some hobbled. Others dragged themselves forward with too many limbs or not enough. Their faces flickered in and out of clarity, some with mouths, some without, some twisted in a mimicry of smiles that never reached their eyes. Eliza turned and ran. The corridor seemed to stretch longer with each step, its walls warping, undulating like breathing lungs. The floor beneath her feet squelched, soft as if soaked in rot. Jars exploded to either side of her, showering her with tiny shards and wet, shrieking shapes that tried to latch on her legs. "Elizea, you said you'd stay. You were supposed to protect us." She screamed, slapping at the things crawling up her calves, kicking free from their gelatinous grips. At the far end of the corridor, a door appeared. No longer wood, but flesh stretched across a frame. It pulsed, and behind it, she heard a heartbeat. Thump, thump, thump. Her own heartbeat matched it. She had no choice. Eliza tore through the living door. It gave way with a wet snap, and she tumbled into another space, this time a nursery. She blinked, confused. The walls were soft pink, the crib pristine and polished, toys arranged in a neat circle on the floor. A mobile of paper stars rotated gently overhead, casting long shadows. But something was wrong. The air smelled sweet, too sweet, like syrup over meat. On the far wall was a mural of a smiling sun above a field of children. But every single child had Eliza's face. Some laughing, some screaming, one gouging out its eyes. Then the mobile stopped. The crib creaked. She turned slowly. Inside it lay a baby, swaddled in black cloth. Its eyes were sealed shut with stitches, and from its lips came the softest, most terrible whisper yet. "You're the mother now." Eliza stumbled back. No, I never." "You created us," the baby cooed, its mouth stretching open wider than any infant should. "You gave us names, and you promised to take us with you." The nursery walls began to bleed. The crib started to rock. The crib rocked violently now, back and forth, slamming against the nursery floor with a rhythm that mimicked a heartbeat gone wrong. The baby's stitched eyes bled a dark, tar-like ichor that dripped onto the mattress and spread into the floor like ink and water. Eliza backed toward the door, only to find there wasn't one. The fleshy entrance she had come through was gone, replaced by a wall smeared with peeling pastel wallpaper. There was no exit, no escape. "You brought us here," the baby gurgled, voice now layered, an infant's tone overlaid with something ancient and hollow. "And you left us. You let us rot in the dark." "No," she whispered, pressing her hands to her temples. "I didn't mean to. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know they were real." The ceiling cracked above her. Something writhed in the beams. The mobile above the crib began to melt, the paper stars dripping like wax, reshaping into teeth, long, yellowed, clicking together as they spun in a slow, hungry orbit. Then the crib split open with a wooden shriek, and from its depths crawled a child. A girl, maybe 7 years old, hair matted in black, mouth stitched shut. Her eyes were Eliza's again, wide and bright, and staring through her. The girl raised a hand, reaching toward her. Eliza couldn't move. "You sealed us in jars," said a voice that came from everywhere. "You buried our names. You walked away when we needed you." More children emerged, crawling from beneath the crib, from behind the rocking horse, from inside the toy chest. All of them versions of her, all of them incomplete. Eliza fell to her knees, shaking, surrounded. What do you want?" she croaked. The girl closest leaned forward and whispered in her ear, "We want to go home." Eliza sobbed. "This isn't home." The children began to hum a lullaby. Something she remembered, something her grandmother used to sing. And as the hum grew louder, the floor beneath her split again, into a spiral staircase leading even deeper into the house's impossible layers. The children stopped singing, eyes wide with expectation. "Go," one said. "Or stay," said another. "But you can't leave until you remember everything." Eliza descended again. The stairs twisted tightly, each step groaning beneath her weight. The air grew colder, not just in temperature, but in feeling, as though warmth itself had been forgotten here, long replaced with mildew, silence, and breath that didn't belong to her. The humming from the nursery above faded, replaced by the sound of dripping. Vet, constant. It echoed off stone now, not wood. These stairs weren't part of any house. They belonged to something older. She reached the bottom and found herself in a basement. Not hers, but an amalgamation of several she half remembered. A dirt floor, crumbling stone walls, shelves lined with toys, warped by moisture and time. A rocking horse leaned in the corner. Its painted eyes had peeled away, and something dark oozed from its mouth. There were drawings on the wall again, scrawled in blood this time. One showed a girl holding a jar, standing over a hole in the floor. Another showed the same girl being pulled inside the jar. And beside them, words carved with fingernails. "We remember what you forgot. Names are not to be buried." A rustling came from the far end of the room. Eliza turned, trembling. There was a door there. A real one this time. Wooden. Ordinary. Its surface scarred with what looked like claw marks and desperate fingers. It pulsed faintly, as if something alive waited behind it. As she approached, she heard voices, familiar, muffled. Her mother, her grandmother, herself, laughing, crying, begging. She reached for the handle. It burned cold in her palm. The moment she twisted it, the door snapped open on its own, revealing a small, brightly lit room. A table at the center. On it sat a single jar. The jar. Eliza stepped inside, heart pounding. This was it. The origin. The moment she had buried everything. She remembered now. Being 7. Finding the jar in the attic. Hearing something talk to her from within. Not threatening. Not angry. Just lonely. And she had promised to keep it safe. To never open it unless it was truly alone. "Do you remember us now?" said a voice from the jar. Eliza nodded. The lid began to unscrew on its own. The lid turned slowly, the metal grinding against glass with a sound that made Eliza's teeth ache. A hiss escaped as it loosened, like air being released after decades trapped in a tomb. Inside the jar, a mist swirled, thick, black, and alive. It coiled against the glass like smoke with intention, pressing to the edge, shaping into eyes, then hands, then faces. Hundreds of faces. Some looked like hers. Some she didn't recognize. All of them watching. "I never meant to hurt you," she whispered. "I was just a kid." The mist stopped swirling. "You were the first," it said, the voices layered and harmonized in perfect despair. "The first to hear us, to see us, to give us a name." Eliza stepped back. "I don't even remember what I called you." "You will." A sudden, fierce wind blew through the room, though there were no windows. The air churned with static, and her hair lifted from her shoulders. The jar began to hum, a vibration that grew louder until it was nearly deafening. The mist surged upward. It didn't attack. It poured into her. Eliza gasped, arms flung wide as the darkness entered her mouth, her eyes, her skin. Cold flooded her veins. Visions exploded behind her eyelids. A little girl locked in a dark room, whispering to a crack in the wall. A baby buried in a crawl space with lullabies etched into the beams. A mother hiding her grief behind sewn lips. A grandmother whispering prayers to a jar hidden beneath the attic floor. Names. So many names. "I remember," Eliza said aloud. Her voice echoed, not just from her mouth, but from within the room itself. "I remember everything." The jar shattered behind her, and the mist evaporated. Or maybe entered her fully. The room was quiet again. She turned to find a new door had appeared. The attic door. Her attic. She stepped through and found herself standing at the top of the attic stairs back home, blinking in the flashlight's beam. "Mom!" Jasper's voice called from below. "Are you okay?" Eliza swayed. The jar was gone. The whispers were not. They were inside her now. Eliza stood at the threshold, 1 foot on the top step of the attic ladder. The air was still, but heavy, too heavy. Not just with dust or heat, but with memory. Her flashlight flickered once, then stabilized, illuminating the untouched corners of the attic where shadows clung like mold. Below her, Jasper waited. "Mom?" He called again, voice tinged with fear. "I'm okay," she said, and her voice sounded strange, warmer, deeper, like it belonged to someone else. Or someone more. She climbed down slowly, boots thudding against each wooden rung. Jasper stared up at her when she emerged. "You were gone a long time." "I lost track of time," she murmured. "The attic's full of old memories." He held up his hand. It trembled. There was a noise. "I heard whispers." She smiled faintly. Sometimes houses speak in their own language. That night, Eliza couldn't sleep. Not because she was afraid, but because she wasn't. The voices were with her now. Whispers in the corners of her vision. Faces in the reflection of her bedroom window. Lullabies floating on the edge of dreams she couldn't quite enter. She didn't feel alone anymore, and that terrified her in ways she couldn't explain. In the early morning hours, she rose and padded down the hallway. The house was silent except for Jasper's gentle breathing. But the attic door was open again, not by accident. The ladder had descended, as if waiting. Eliza climbed it without hesitation. This time, there was nothing visible inside. No yes, no children, no versions of herself, just darkness. And yet, she knew they were still there, beneath the floorboards, inside the walls, between the folds of reality. And as she sat on the old wooden floor, she began to hum. The lullaby, the one she hadn't sung since childhood. Soft and slow. A welcome, an apology, a promise. The attic felt warmer as Eliza sang. Not comforting, watchful. The kind of warmth that made the skin prickle like breath against the nape of your neck when no one should be behind you. As her voice wavered on the final note, the lullaby echoed back to her, not quite as she had sung it. The tune warped, a half-step flat, a child's voice mimicking her cadence imperfectly. A second voice joined it, then a third. Soon, a choir of unseen children sang with her in the dark. Eliza stared ahead. Her eyes adjusted slowly to the gloom, and shapes began to take form in the corners of the attic. Figures hunched low, small, heads tilted at impossible angles, fingers too long, eyes that blinked sideways. They didn't come closer. Not yet. She remembered their names now. Not just one or two, but all of them. Every voice, every whisper she'd sealed. Every companion she'd created in her childhood isolation. She whispered the names softly, like summoning them home. Edie, Bryn, Coralie, Fista. The attic groaned in response. A hatch she hadn't seen before creaked open in the ceiling above, revealing a ladder that led even higher, into a part of the house that should not exist. The shadows stirred, retreating from the new path. Eliza didn't hesitate. She climbed. The higher attic was different, round, tower-like. A single window let in moonlight, casting a silvery pool on the floor. In the center sat a child-sized chair, and beside it, a weathered book. The chair rocked slowly, though no wind blew. Eliza approached the book and opened it. Inside were drawings, her own from when she was very small. Crude sketches of imaginary friends, of games she played alone, of creatures that only appeared when the lights went out. Each page pulsed faintly beneath her fingers. The last page had no drawing, just a single sentence, scribbled in trembling black ink. Right hour ending. Eliza looked toward the rocking chair. It had stopped. In its seat now sat the doll, the same porcelain face, same cracked cheek, but its head slowly turned to look at her, and its stitched mouth began to open. The doll's mouth opened wider than its porcelain jaw should have allowed, the cracked ceramic groaning as if resisting the motion. Inside was not a tongue, nor teeth, just a hollow blackness that pulsed with a dim red glow, like coals buried deep in a hearth long gone cold. Eliza froze, her fingers still on the book. The attic around her shifted subtly. The walls didn't move, but their edges blurred, as though she were trapped in a memory replaying itself. The doll blinked, slow, deliberate. Then it spoke in a voice stitched from many, thin and reedy like wind through a graveyard gate. "You made us real, Eliza. Not in body, but in belief." She swallowed. "I was just a child. I didn't understand. But you do now." The book in her hands grew heavier, the pages flipping themselves until they stopped at a new spread, 2 blank pages. Across the top, in curling black ink, a title formed. Chapter 1. The House That Remembered. Her breath caught. "This is the beginning," the doll said, "and you must write the rest." "I don't know how," she whispered. "I don't know what you want from me." The doll's head tilted, a sharp crack as its neck strained. "We want to remain. Without your words, we fade. Forgotten things rot in the dark, but stories live forever." She looked down at the blank pages, her mind spinning. The attic trembled faintly, like a held breath. "Why me?" she asked. "Because you listened. You believed. You made space for the ones no one else saw." The shadows began to gather again, faces blooming from the edges of the room, silent mouths moving without sound. Jasper's voice echoed from below, distant, muffled. "Mom? Are you in the attic again?" She turned toward the ladder, but it was no longer there. The attic had sealed itself. Eliza stood alone with the book, the doll, and the host of things she had once locked away. With trembling fingers, she reached into her pocket and found a stub of graphite, left over from her old sketchbook. She pressed it to the page and began to write. The graphite moved with a will of its own. Eliza's hand trembled as she began the first words, but soon the lines poured from her like breath she'd been holding for decades. Once, in a house full of forgotten names, a girl opened a jar and found her other selves waiting. As each word formed, the attic changed. The wood beneath her feet darkened, deepened, warping into the color of wet soil. Cobwebs unfurled from the ceiling like curtains parting for a stage play. The faces in the shadows stepped forward, no longer distorted phantoms, but children. Real, or nearly so. They had her eyes, her old scars, her fears drawn plainly across their fragile expressions. One sat beside her, small knees pulled to their chest, watching her write. Another leaned over her shoulder, humming softly. The porcelain doll returned to its stillness, mouth sewn shut once again. The attic was now a library of memory, each shadow a volume, each breath a page. Eliza kept writing. They had waited in silence, in splinters, in stories never told aloud. But the attic kept them warm. The attic remembered. She turned the page, and suddenly, the walls around her pulsed. A name formed in her mind, not one she remembered from her childhood, but before, from a dream, from the crib, from the heartbeat in the house itself. Marnie. She wrote it down, and the attic shuddered in relief. Somewhere in the dark, a quiet sob answered the release of that name. A long shadow peeled away from the far corner, revealing a little girl with a cracked forehead, her dress tattered with moth holes. She stepped into the light and whispered, "Thank you." Eliza looked at the others. More names begged to be written, crowding behind her eyes. And as she gave them life, one by one, they came forward, shedding their monstrous shapes, becoming real again. Not living, not dead, but remembered. The attic ladder descended behind her with a groan. Jasper's voice echoed again, closer. "Mom? You okay? You've been up there a while." Eliza stood. She looked at the book, now a quarter full. So many names left. She closed it gently. "I'll be back," she told the shadows. The children nodded, not sad, just patient. As she descended the ladder, the attic door closed behind her on its own. But she knew now, it would always open when she needed it. The house greeted her with silence, the kind that didn't feel empty but expectant. As Eliza stepped off the attic ladder, she found Jasper standing in the hallway, his wide eyes filled with worry. "Mom, are you okay?" She knelt to meet his gaze. I think I am. For the first time in a long while. He hesitated. You were talking to yourself. Eliza smiled gently. No, I was listening. He didn't understand. Not yet, but something in her voice calmed him. He reached for her hand, and she took it, feeling how small and warm it was. How real. Come on, she said. Let's get some sleep. That night, Eliza didn't dream. Instead, she lay awake, staring at the ceiling, the book pressed against her chest beneath the covers. Its pages pulsed with names she hadn't yet written. Every few minutes, she'd feel a subtle tap from within the book, like tiny knuckles knocking softly. Not impatient, just reminding her. Sometime after midnight, a soft knock came from downstairs. Not from the attic, from the front door. Eliza rose, heart already racing. No one ever knocked this late. Not out here. She padded to the foyer, barefoot, the floorboards whispering under her weight. The knocking came again, 3 times, slow and deliberate. She opened the door. There was no one there. Only fog. Thick, clinging fog that curled around her ankles and rolled through the threshold like an invited guest. Something sat on the porch, though. A box, wrapped in yellowed paper, tied with decaying ribbon. On top was a small card that read, in careful handwriting, "For Eliza," from the ones who still remember. She brought it inside slowly, heart hammering. Jasper hadn't stirred. The house was still except for the low ticking of the hallway clock. She set the box on the kitchen table and opened it. Inside was a small wooden puppet, its face carved in careful detail. It looked like her, not as she was now, but as she had been at 7 years old. Underneath it, wrapped in brittle cloth, was a second book. Blank, just like the first had been. But when she opened the cover, a name was already written inside. Jasper. Eliza stared at the name written in the new book, her son's name, etched in ink so dark it seemed to drink the light. She ran her fingers over the page, half expecting it to smudge. But it didn't. It was permanent. Claimed. The puppet stared back from the box, its painted smile slightly crooked. A crack ran down one cheek, mirroring the one on the porcelain doll from the attic. She touched its wooden hand. It was warm, faintly pulsing. A whisper stirred behind her. She spun around. Nothing there, yet the shadows in the kitchen had deepened. The air had changed, heavy again, the same pressure as when she first opened the jar. She looked back at the book. Why him, she whispered. The page turned on its own. Because he listens too. A memory surfaced, unbidden, sharp. Jasper at 4 years old, talking to the vent in his bedroom, giggling into the dark. She'd written it off as imagination, the harmless babble of childhood. But he'd insisted the voice in the vent knew songs, that it called itself Marnie. Eliza's skin went cold. Marnie's been with him, too, she whispered. The page turned again. This time, a drawing emerged in that same ink. Not one she had drawn, but a child's. Crude, scrawled with too many eyes and too few limbs. It looked like a girl. It looked like the doll. The caption beneath read, "She promised me the stories would keep me safe." Eliza slammed the book shut. The kitchen light buzzed overhead, then burst, plunging the room into darkness. A quiet creak echoed from upstairs. Jasper's door. She bolted from the kitchen, the book clutched in one hand, the puppet in the other. Her feet pounded the steps as the whispers rose again. Faint, playful, overlapping like the giggles of unseen children. She threw open Jasper's door. He was sitting upright in bed, eyes wide, staring at the corner of the room. "Mom," he whispered. "She's back." Eliza followed his gaze. The attic door was open again, but it wasn't in the ceiling. Now it was on his wall. A perfect square of darkness, yawning wide and breathing. Eliza stepped in front of Jasper, shielding him from the gaping black square in the wall. Her instinct screamed to run, to slam the door, grab her son, and flee the house entirely. But some deeper, older part of her, the part that remembered the lullaby, kept her rooted. The attic door in the wall shuddered. A hand reached out, small, childlike, fingers tipped with dirt. It pressed against the threshold, as if testing the edge of reality, then withdrew just as quickly. "Eliza," came the voice. Soft, velvet-wrapped. Wrong. Jasper clung to her. It was an event last time. It whispered my name. Eliza felt the puppet in her hand grow heavier. Its painted eyes looked up at her now. Moved, just slightly. It didn't blink, it acknowledged. She held it tight. The book in her other hand vibrated. Pages fluttered, as if caught in a wind that wasn't there. A name formed on a fresh page. The Collector. Eliza's breath caught in her throat. She remembered now. The whispers in the walls. The jars in the attic. The attic hadn't just kept memories. It hadn't merely preserved forgotten children. It harvested them. And the Collector was its hand, its voice, its way of gathering. The door on the wall yawned wider, revealing a hallway lined with shelves. Rows and rows of glass jars, each with a faint glow inside. Eliza recognized one immediately, the jar with the purple ribbon. Hers. She stepped forward. Eliza, Jasper whispered, panicked. Don't go. I have to, she said softly. I left too much behind, and now it wants you. She turned to him, crouching low. Stay here. No matter what you hear, don't follow. Lock the door. If anything speaks to you, don't answer. He nodded, terrified. Eliza kissed his forehead and rose. She stepped through the attic door in the wall, and it sealed shut behind her. Inside, the hallway stretched impossibly far. Footsteps echoed, though she hadn't taken any yet. And far at the end, beneath a flickering attic light, stood the doll. But it was taller now, human-sized, and smiling. The doll's smile was no longer painted. It had flesh, stretched and stitched crudely at the corners, as though someone had carved a grin where no mouth had belonged. Its eyes were not porcelain anymore. They were real, moist and glassy, locked onto Eliza with a hunger not of malice, but of possession. Eliza, it said, but the voice wasn't its own. It was hers, a child's version of her voice, echoing from long ago. The voice she had used when she talked to the vents, when she whispered secrets to the attic shadows. It mimicked her memories perfectly. You came back to finish the story, the doll said. Eliza tightened her grip on the book and puppet. Behind the doll stretched a corridor of memory, walls lined with shelves containing not just jars, but objects from forgotten childhoods. A teddy bear missing one eye, a drawing smeared with tears, a music box that clicked over and over without playing a note. Every item had a label. Every label had a name. So she recognized. Many she didn't, but all of them whispered her name as she passed. The doll glided backward into the hall, beckoning. She followed. I remember you building us, the doll continued. One piece at a time. You gave us shape. You gave us rules. No parents. No pain. No ending. Just games. They passed the door. Eliza slowed. The name carved into the wood stopped her heart. Jasper Ainsley, 2035. She tried the knob. Locked. The doll chuckled. Not yet, but soon. No, Elitha whispered. I won't let you have him. The doll tilted its head, eyes gleaming. You already gave him to us. You wrote him in. His name is in the book. Eliza opened the book. Sure enough, Jasper's name remained on the front page. But something had changed. Below it, another name was being written by an invisible hand. Eliza Ainsley returned. The moment the last letter formed, the hallway shook. Jars rattled. A low groan rose from the very bones of the attic. Eliza, the doll said, its voice now deeper, ancient. Finish the story, or stay in it forever. And behind the doll, a new door appeared. One painted red, with a single word carved into the wood. Rewrite. Eliza stared at the red door. The word rewrite glistened as though freshly carved, sap-like resin bleeding from the grooves. Her fingers trembled as she reached for the handle. It was warm, too warm, as if someone had just let go of it from the other side. Behind her, the doll's footsteps stopped. You have a choice, it said. Eliza turned. The creature's eyes shimmered, filled with something ancient. Longing, maybe. Or fear. Walk through that door, the doll said, and you begin again. You change the story. You can fix what you broke. But you must give something in return. Eliza's breath caught. What? Your voice, it said. The words hit like a blow. The doll stepped closer. Your voice gave us shape. It built us. Named us. You sang the lullaby that opened the attic. You told the stories that kept us alive. If you rewrite the past, You must stay silent in the present. She looked down at the book. Blank pages fluttered. The puppet in her other hand twitched faintly, like it knew. She could fix this. She could rewrite everything. Stop Marnie from ever calling out to her through the vents. Seal the attic. Keep Jasper safe. But she would lose the ability to warn him, to speak to him, to sing to him when the shadows got long. Eliza, the doll said, the attic survives on memory. It's too full. Something must be erased to make room for what you want. She stepped toward the door. Tears welled in her eyes. Will he remember me? She whispered. The doll paused. Its stitched smile bent slightly, almost sad. Only in dreams. Eliza placed her hand on the red door and turned the handle. A blast of warm, golden air flooded out. The scent of childhood summers, chalk dust, rain on pavement, the scent of her mother's scarf. The door opened wide. Inside, a room that wasn't the attic. It was a nursery. Hers. Small, safe, untouched by shadows. And at the center, a new jar. Empty. Waiting. She stepped inside. The door closed behind her. And in Jasper's room, back in the waking world, the attic door in the wall vanished. Jasper awoke with a start. The attic door in his wall was gone. No seams, no outline. Just smooth wallpaper where moments ago there had been a gaping, breathing void. The air in the room felt lighter now, but not empty, hushed, as if holding its breath. "Mom," he called, voice uncertain. Silence. He padded down the hallway in his pajamas, feet quiet on the wooden floor. The house was still, the kind of stillness that doesn't feel safe but waiting. He descended the stairs slowly, one hand trailing the railing, heart thudding in his chest. In the kitchen, the box still sat on the table. The puppet was gone. The book lay closed beside it. Jasper climbed onto the chair and opened it. Inside, the pages were no longer blank. They were filled with stories. Dozens of them. Some in a child's handwriting, others in neat adult script. Sketches lined the margins. Familiar faces, distant places, shadowy things that made his stomach twist to look at too long. And on the last page was a picture. A woman standing in front of a red door. His mom. Below it, a final note. She rewrote the story. You are safe, but remember the attic. Always remember the attic. A soft click echoed through the house. Jasper turned toward the sound. The hallway closet had opened slightly. He slid off the chair, drawn toward it, one footstep at a time. Inside, at the very back, barely visible under an old blanket, was a jar. Not glowing, not threatening, just there. He pulled it out, carefully, like it might break. Inside was something cloudy. A flicker, like a trapped whisper, and a folded piece of paper taped to the lid. In his mom's handwriting, for when the story begins again. Jasper hugged the jar to his chest. Outside, the wind began to howl. And upstairs, in the attic that no longer was, the doll sat on the floor, quiet, alone, and unfinished. It tilted its head and began to hum. The attic, or whatever space had once been called that, had grown quiet in Eliza's absence. Too quiet. Where there had once been jars pulsing with faint light, shelves had gone empty. The corridors of memory that twisted through impossible angles now stretched on in a bleak, formless mist. No lafterikov. No whispers slithered through the boards. Only the doll remained. It sat cross-legged on the warped floor, fingers folded neatly in its lap, the seams of its mouth tugging downward in something like grief. In front of it, the red door pulsed slowly, closed but breathing. The doll lifted its chin. Behind it, in the shadows, the collector stirred. It no longer wore the mask of a child. No more puppetry or illusions. It moved like oil poured through silk, a humanoid shape made entirely of the things forgotten. Torn dreams, silent lullabies, childhood promises never kept. She gave too much, it whispered. She will fade. The doll didn't reply. Its glass eyes remained fixed on the door. She thought she could sever the thread, the collector said. But stories do not end. They change. They wait. It reached down, lifting a new book, one unmarked, untouched, but not empty. Inside, a single page had begun to write itself. Slowly, carefully, Jasper Ainsley dreamed again tonight. The collector's featureless face tilted in what might have been a smile. He remembers. The doll twitched. A single hum escaped its stitched lips. The collector's voice rumbled deeper now. He will come back. As they all do, the attic opens for the ones who listen. For the ones who lose things they shouldn't. For the ones who dream too long. From somewhere in the distance, a faint knocking. Once. Twice. Then silence. The doll turned its head toward the sound, smile creeping back. The attic was not gone. It had simply shifted, and the next child to whisper to the dark would find the door again. Jasper couldn't sleep. Though the attic door had vanished, something inside him itched. Some echo of the whispers, some deep memory unraveling at the edges. He lay under his blanket with the jar clutched to his chest. It no longer pulsed, no longer glowed. But he could feel it humming, as if it still carried a piece of his mother's voice, buried deep in the glass. He had dreams now, vivid and strange. He dreamed of a staircase that curved upward into blackness, but when he reached the top, it always led to a mirror. And in the mirror, he saw her, Eliza, sitting cross-legged in a nursery that wasn't quite hers anymore, drawing pictures in a book that never ended. Sometimes she looked up and smiled at him. Sometimes she didn't notice him at all. Tonight, he woke at exactly 3:12 a.m. Something had tapped the window. He sat up, heart pounding, and crept toward it. Outside, nothing but the big oak tree swaying in the wind. But then he saw it. Something tied to a branch just outside, a strip of faded red fabric fluttering. He opened the window and leaned out, tugging it free. It wasn't just a strip. It was a ribbon he recognized. The purple one from the jar. His mother's. As soon as he touched it, the house sighed. Like the shifting of ancient bones. His floorboards creaked softly, not from weight, but remembrance. He turned, jar in one hand, ribbon in the other, and paused. The wall opposite his bed had changed. A fine seam, barely visible in the moonlight, ran across it in the perfect outline of a square. The attic door had returned, but this time it was different. There was no handle, just a single line of chalk, scrawled in looping cursive. Knock when you're ready. Jasper didn't move. He stared at it for a long time. Then he whispered to the jar, "Are you still in there, Mom?" The ribbon curled slightly in his palm, like it hurt him. And from behind the wall, a whisper, not words, but the familiar melody of a lullaby. The same one she used to sing. Jasper stepped forward and knocked. The knock echoed, not just in Jasper's room, but through him down into the marrow of his bones. The air stilled, the shadows in the corners of the room drawing taut like fabric stretched too tight. He waited. Nothing. Then, click, the seam on the wall unzipped with a soft, wet sigh, revealing a familiar square of darkness. No stairs this time, just a long corridor, lined with peeling wallpaper and old picture frames whose glass was cracked or fogged with time. Jasper's breath trembled. He clutched the jar tighter and stepped inside. The moment his foot crossed the threshold, the door behind him sealed shut with a thump. No handle, no exit. The darkness adjusted, not complete, but watchful, as though the attic itself had eyes. He walked forward. Each picture frame he passed showed him something different. In one, his mother as a child, dancing with the puppet. In another, a boy crying beneath a bed, the jar clutched to his chest. In another, himself, standing exactly as he was now, staring at the picture. Jasper turned away. At the end of the hall, a door waited. Red. Unmarked this time, but pulsing faintly like a heart. He reached out, but it opened before he touched it, revealing a vast chamber, not like the cramped attic he remembered. This place was cathedral-like in size, filled with shelves reaching up into endless darkness. And standing at the center was the collector. It didn't smile, didn't move, just waited. Jasper stepped forward. "I want her back," he said, his voice stronger than he felt. "I remember her. I still remember." The collector tilted its head. Its body glistened like wet paper and ink. "Memories are the currency of this place," it said, "and yours are uncommonly strong." "I'll give you mine," Jasper said. "All of them. Everything, if she can come back." The collector was silent for a long moment, then stretched out a hand. A long, ink-stained finger pointed at the jar. "You brought her," it said, "but she is not complete." Jasper opened the jar. Inside, something shimmered. A mote of light. A memory. The lullaby. He held it out. The collector reached forward, but didn't take it. It stepped aside. Behind it, the red door opened again. Inside was the nursery, and his mother. Older, tired, eyes wide with disbelief. "Eliza Ainsley," the collector intoned, "your story has been remembered." She turned toward her son. Tears welled. "Jasper." He ran to her. She caught him in trembling arms. And the lullaby, her voice, came back, piece by piece, as he clutched the jar between them. But above them, unseen by either of them, the shells began to ripple. The attic was changing. It had not given them escape. It had given them a new chapter. The nursery wasn't quite the one Eliza remembered. The colors were faded, like memories left too long in the sun. The rocking horse in the corner swayed on its own. The wallpaper showed faint outlines of things that had once moved, hands, maybe your mouse pressed against the other side. But for now, they were still. Eliza held Jasper close. She could feel him, really feel him, warm, alive, heavier than she remembered. The attic had taken years from her, reshaped her into memory, then memory into something else. But now, with him in her arms, those years came rushing back. And so did the fear. "You shouldn't be here," she whispered. "It's not done with us." Jasper pulled back, holding up the jar. "I brought you back. I remembered everything. I didn't forget." The jar was nearly empty now. Only a single spark flickered within it, a dying ember of the attic's hold. "I know," she said. "That's what brought it back, too." The floor trembled, softly at first, then harder, deeper, like footsteps approaching from inside the walls. They turned toward the door. The collector had vanished, but the door remained open, and beyond it, the long corridor was shifting, walls stretching, peeling like old bark, revealing thousands of tiny doors, each the size of a book cover. Some creaked open, spilling out whispers and laughter. Others slammed shut as something thudded behind them. One door stood out, wooden, pale, marked with a child's handprint. Jasper pointed. "It's calling me." "No," Eliza said sharply. "That's how it traps you. That door doesn't lead out. It leads down." He looked at her. "Then how do we leave?" She opened the book. The pages inside were still turning themselves. Faster now. Wind rushing through as if the story were trying to catch up to them. They saw glimpses of themselves in drawings and words. Scenes they hadn't lived yet. Outcomes unwritten. "It's not about leaving," Eliza said. "It's about ending it." "But how?" "We write the ending," she whispered. Behind them, the floor split. A crack tore through the nursery, splitting the rug, the rocking horse, and then the crib. From the rift, a black mist poured upward, dense and wet, filled with whispers. And from it, the doll crawled out, its glass eyes no longer curious, now burning, its stitched mouth unthreaded, revealing too many teeth. "We missed you," it said. "You're home." Eliza pulled Jasper behind her, book open in one hand, jar in the other. And for the first time in years, she began to write. Eliza gripped the pencil as though her life depended on it, because in this place, it did. The book trembled in her hands, its pages fluttering madly, resisting her control. The attic did not want an ending. It thrived in half-finished stories, in loops and fragments, and things left unsaid. But Eliza had learned its language, and she had remembered. She pressed the pencil to the page and wrote. The doll turned to ash as the story rewrote itself. The doll froze mid-step. Its two long limbs jerked once, twice, and then its painted surface cracked. Hairline fractures spread across its cheeks, its chest, down to its legs. It gave a dry, papery hiss, reaching toward them. "No," it cried in a child's voice. "We're not done. We're not." But the attic had already begun to obey. A gust of wind blew through the room, carrying dust and ash in a cyclone. The doll shrieked once more, and then crumbled, collapsing into a pile of gray powder on the split nursery floor. Jasper clung to his mother's side. "You're doing it," he whispered. "You're changing it." Eliza kept writing, Faster now. The red door sealed shut. The collector vanished. The attic, starving, began to shrink. The walls creaked and groaned. Floorboards split and folded in on themselves. Books tumbled from invisible shelves. The dozens of tiny doors slammed one by one, echoes like gunshots. And then, silence. Just for a moment. Then a voice. Low. Familiar. Angry. You think you've won? The collector reemerged. Not from a door, but from the ceiling, unfolding from shadow and wood grain like a grotesque origami. Its face had melted into something monstrous, no longer formless, now shaped by every nightmare they'd ever forgotten. You can't end what you didn't begin, it hissed. Eliza held the jar up, the last ember still glowing inside. I did begin it, she said, voice shaking but clear. I'll let you in. I whispered the first name. I gave you the first story. She raised the book. And now I'll give you the last. The collector screamed. The entire attic lurched as if trying to buck them off, like a living creature in its death throes. Jasper stumbled. The jar slipped from his hands. No, he cried. But Eliza caught it, barely, before it could shatter. The ember inside sparked, and from somewhere deep within, a lullaby began again. The story was almost over, but the attic still had one more chapter to fight. The collector surged forward, limbs stretching impossibly long, forming claws that tore grooves in the floor. Its voice shifted wildly, cycling through every voice Jasper had ever loved. His mother's, his grandmother's, his own as a baby. Stay, it pleaded. Stay, and you can have everything back. All of it. Whole. Eliza didn't look away. You're not offering anything real. Just reflections. The attic walls were shivering now, splinters flaking off like snow. The nursery folded inward, toys turning to charcoal and paper as they collapsed into heaps. Books bled ink across the floor. Jasper opened the book, his hands shaking. Can I help? He asked. Eliza handed him the pencil. Write it with me, she said. Together, they scrawled a single line across the blank page. The attic forgot their names. The air shattered. Every shelf collapsed at once, and the collector howled, a sound so sharp and deep it tore the air itself. It reeled back, its body folding and splitting, limbs flailing as it clawed at the walls, the ceiling, the books, the fading memories around it. You can't, it shrieked. You belong here. But Eliza pressed her hand to the jar's lid and twisted. Click! The lid came off, and from inside, the ember leapt free. It wasn't light anymore. It was memory, full, complete, and undeniable. The lullaby spilled into the attic like a flood, and for a single moment, the collector stood still, silent. It began to unravel. Its body peeled apart into threads, each one a name, a forgotten face, a childhood promise never kept. They floated upward, dissolving into the air as Eliza and Jasper kept writing. The attic collapsed upon itself, leaving only truth. The red door cracked, then splintered, then vanished entirely, replaced by morning light streaming through a small, square opening in the ceiling. The attic was falling apart, but beyond that collapse, home, Jasper gripped his mother's hand. Now? He asked. Eliza nodded, and together they climbed toward the light. The square of morning light above them flickered like a candle about to gutter. It was dimmer than it had been a moment ago, as though the attic itself, sensing its own undoing, was trying to smother it before the escape became permanent. Eliza lifted Jasper onto the crumbling dresser beneath the hatch. Go first, she said. He looked down at her wide-eyed. What if it closes behind me? It won't, she promised. Not this time. He hesitated, then nodded, and pushed himself up toward the light. As his head rose through the hatch, a wave of cool, clean air hit him. He gasped. It smelled like sunlight, like fresh dust, like the real world. He scrambled out onto the upper landing of their house, where a wooden stool had been dragged beneath the attic door years ago. He turned back. Mom, he called. Below, the attic groaned violently. Floorboards snapped. One of the picture frames burst into flame and burned blue. Eliza was halfway up when the collector's voice returned. Not from a mouth, but from every corner of the space, bleeding through the wood itself. "You think stories just end?" it whispered. "You've written your part, but now you belong on the shelf." The shelf behind Eliza exploded open, rows of dusty, unfinished books flying free and circling like birds. Pages tore themselves midair, swarming her, try to wrap around her arms and face. She screamed and kicked at them, crawling up faster, gasping, reaching. Jasper leaned down, grabbing her wrist. "I remember you," he shouted. "I remember all of you. You're not a ghost. You're my mom." His voice shattered something invisible. The books froze midair, then dropped, all at once, slamming to the attic floor like dead birds. Eliza heaved herself up through the hatch. They tumbled together onto the hallway floor, the jar clutched between them. Behind them, the attic hatch slammed shut, and this time there was no ladder beneath it. Just an ordinary ceiling. No seams, no whispers, no door. Eliza stared at it, and for the first time in years, her shoulders sagged. Not from fear, but relief. "It's over," Jasper whispered. She looked at him. "No," she said, wrapping him in her arms. "It's just beginning, because stories like this never truly end. They just wait." And somewhere, behind a wall or above a hallway, the attic was still whispering, just more quietly now. The days that followed were filled with quiet things. The kind of quiet that felt earned, where silence was a bomb, not a warning. Eliza and Jasper no longer jumped at every creak in the floorboards or shadow cast across the hallway. The house, for the first time in years, felt like theirs again. But they didn't speak of the attic. Not directly. The hatch remained sealed. Eliza nailed a plank over it, more symbolic than functional, and painted it to match the ceiling. It wasn't hiding it. It was closure. One morning, Jasper asked her, "What if someone else hears it?" Eliza looked up from her tea. "Then I hope they don't answer." But she said it softly, not cruelly, because part of her knew not everyone who heard the attic had a choice. That evening, Eliza found herself back in the hallway with the jar. The ember inside had faded to a faint glow, pulsing like a sleeping heart. She didn't know why she kept it. Perhaps a reminder, perhaps a key, perhaps some part of her couldn't let go entirely, not after all the years of pretending it wasn't real. She sat on the mantel, and that night, she dreamed of the book again. Only this time, it wasn't empty. It was full, front to back, with a story. Their story. She turned the last page, and there was a single sentence written in her own looping script. You remembered what others forgot. She woke up with tears on her cheeks and sunlight in the room. Across the house, Jasper was laughing. A real laugh. And for Eliza, that was enough. But stories, even finished ones, cast long shadows. Far away, miles, maybe towns away, another attic door creaked open on rusted hinges. Dust shifted, a breeze stirred, and somewhere in the dark, a voice whispered, "We begin again." The next town over was called Willoughby Hollow. Small, old, and hollow in more ways than one. Most of the houses had slate roofs and picket fences grayed by time. Children played in cul-de-sacs, while parents traded gossip across sagging porches. People there lived quiet lives, simple lives. And yet, one house had begun to change. Number 17, Hemlock Lane. It had stood empty for decades. A crooked little Victorian with sun-bleached shutters and warped glass windows that caught light in strange ways. No one remembered who'd owned it before. Some said it used to be a boarding house. Others swore it was an orphanage. But no one had ever heard laughter from it. Until now, because the Myers family had moved in. Claire and Daniel, a young couple looking for a fresh start, and their daughter Nora, 7 years old, whip-smart, and prone to talking to her toys as if they answered back. They chose a fixer-upper, the neighbors said. They got it dirt cheap. They're brave, someone muttered. Or stupid. Nora didn't care. She liked the house the moment she saw it, especially the attic window. It was round and clouded, shaped like a ship's porthole. From her room across the hall, she could see it at night. Sometimes it gleamed silver in the moonlight, like it was watching her back. One evening, while exploring, she found the pull cord. It dangled from the hallway ceiling, covered in dust and spider silk. She gave a tug. Creak, The attic ladder unfolded with a groan that echoed through the walls. At the same moment, somewhere deeper in the house, a picture frame fell off the wall. Claire poked her head out of the kitchen. Nora, just exploring. Nora called cheerfully, already climbing. The attic smelled like dried leaves and cinnamon. But under that, something sharper. Wet wood, ink, old dreams. Nora stepped onto the floorboards and let her eyes adjust. Everything was covered in white sheets, like furniture asleep beneath snowdrifts. A single trunk sat near the back, its lock broken. She knelt, heart thudding with excitement. Inside was a book, old, leather-bound, and wrapped in twine like someone had tried to keep it shut. She undid the knot, opened the cover, and on the first page, in faint, looping handwriting, it said, "To whoever finds this, remember your story, or it will remember you first." Nora smiled. "I like stories," she whispered, and the attic whispered back. "So do we." Nora turned the pages slowly. Each one was blank. She frowned, running her fingers across the parchment. It felt warm, the kind of warmth that reminded her of breath on a window pane. And as she flipped back to the first page, something had changed. New words had appeared beneath the opening line. "Do you remember the place between waking and dreaming?" She blinked. Had she missed that before? No, she was sure it hadn't been there. She glanced behind her. The attic was still, wrapped in the dim hush of early evening. Dust floated lazily through the shafts of amber light, breaking through the warped window. Nothing moved, and yet she felt like someone was sitting just out of sight, watching with patient interest. She looked back at the book. More words appeared. "We do." The ink bubbled onto the page, as though being written by an invisible hand. Nora's heart beat faster, but she wasn't afraid. Not yet. This was like magic, like a secret spell only she could see. She turned another page. Blank. But then, "Write your name, and we'll begin." She hesitated, then whispered, "Okay." She looked around for something to write with. Nestled in the corner of the trunk was a tiny, old-fashioned pencil, sharpened to a perfect point. She held it gently, almost reverently, and scrawled across the center of the next blank page. Nora Myers. The attic pulsed, not with light or sound, but with something older, heavier, like the space around her had inhaled all at once and was waiting for her next breath. And the book shuddered. Letters slithered up from the page like worms from soil. They twisted and knotted themselves into a new sentence. "Welcome back." She tilted her head. "Back where?" The book didn't answer, but one of the sheets in the attic shifted. Just a little, just enough to whisper. Nora crept toward it and found a small door behind the sheet, much too small for an adult, the kind of door that shouldn't be there. Painted red with a bronze handle. Her fingers itched to touch it. Behind her, the book added another line. "Every attic has its story." She reached for the handle, and far away, Eliza Boland jolted upright in bed, her breath catching. The ember on the mantel had flared to life, glowing like it had just taken its first breath in weeks. Eliza stood in the hallway, staring at the mantel. The jar sat perfectly still, untouched, but the ember inside was no longer dormant. It pulsed steadily now, casting a dull orange glow against the brick like a coal refusing to die. Its light danced across the picture frames lining the hallway, warping their reflections. She didn't want to believe it, didn't want to think it could come back. But some part of her knew it had never truly left. The attic was not confined to wood and nails. It was a pattern, a parasite of memory, of story, and it found a new voice. Jasper appeared beside her, rubbing sleep from his eyes. "Why is it glowing again?" he asked. Eliza didn't answer at first. She just stared at it, her jaw tight. Then someone opened a door. Jasper blinked. "What door?" She turned to him, her voice low and serious. "Another attic, somewhere far away." She glanced back toward the jar. "It's awake again, Jasp. It's writing." He didn't ask how she knew. He just believed her. They both knew what it meant when the ember stirred. Eliza stepped back in her bedroom and pulled open the bottom drawer of her nightstand. Inside, buried beneath old photos and yellowed notebook pages, was the small black key. The one that hadn't fit anything in their house. The one that smelled faintly of smoke and pressed flowers. She hadn't touched it in years. But tonight, it felt warm in her hand. Across town lines, county lines, and state borders, Nora crouched in front of the red door in her attic. She'd been holding her breath for several seconds now, her hand hovering just inches from the handle. It felt cold, then hot, then cold again, like the seasons were cycling through it. She reached out and turned it. Click! The door creaked open on ancient hinges. But what lay beyond wasn't more attic. It was a staircase descending into impossible blackness, where the walls pulsed faintly with an inner glow, like veins beneath thin skin. She hesitated only a moment, then stepped through. The moment her foot touched the stair, the door snapped shut behind her, and the attic was silent once again. But downstairs, her mother Claire paused as she stirred the soup. She frowned. She thought she heard something, a faint whisper, a lullaby. She turned down the burner and listened. Nothing, just the wind outside. She shook her head and returned to cooking, unaware that, upstairs, the red door had vanished completely, and that Nora was now walking deeper into a place where stories go to feed. The staircase twisted as it descended, impossibly deep for any attic Nora had ever seen. The steps weren't made of wood, but of something darker, polished and veined like old marble, and warm under her feet. With each step, her shadow multiplied. She could hear her heartbeat in her ears. But beneath that, the low hum of voices, countless voices speaking in soft murmurs, as if reading aloud in a vast and distant library. The walls pulsed with a soft amber light, showing glimpses of rooms? No, scenes. She passed one, a boy standing in a field of snow, whispering secrets to a scarecrow. Another, a woman crouched in a bathtub, her face buried in her hands as the water around her turned black. Each doorway framed a story, playing in silence. The deeper Nora went, the clearer the voices became. And then came the whisper behind her. Nora! She froze, turned. No one. The staircase behind her spiraled into darkness. The attic above gone. Her pencil was still in her hand. She gripped it tightly and kept walking. At last, the stairwell ended in a hallway made entirely of books. Their spines twitched as she passed, some cracking open to reveal blank pages that bled words as if freshly written. A doorway appeared at the end, an arch of black wood carved with eyes. She stepped through. Inside, the room looked familiar. A child's room. A little bed, crooked shelves, a stuffed rabbit sitting on the windowsill, and a mirror. Nora moved toward it and stopped. Her reflection wasn't her own. It was a girl about her age, but not quite. Her hair was longer, her dress old-fashioned, and her eyes were wide with desperation. She mouthed something over and over. Don't forget. Don't forget. Don't forget. The room rippled. The walls shivered. And suddenly, Nora wasn't alone. A shadow slithered across the ceiling like oil in water, its limbs too long, too slow, its head brushing the curve of the ceiling as it circled the room. The collector, but younger, or older, or maybe this was its first form. Its mouth moved and a deep, musical voice spoke. Not from the creature, but from the walls. You came to remember, but memory has a price. Nora backed away. What do you want? The voice chuckled softly. To be remembered. The collector stretched one long finger toward her chest, and the pencil in her hand burned. Words exploded from its tip, bright and furious, splattering across the walls, lighting up the room like lightning in a thunderstorm. Nora screamed, but she didn't run. She wrote. She didn't know how or what. Only that if she stopped, she'd vanish like the others. So she wrote her name, her story, and the story of a woman named Eliza, and a boy named Jasper, and the attic that never stayed in one place for long. And somewhere across distance and memory, Eliza felt it, like someone tugging on a thread tied to her soul. She grabbed the black key and whispered, I'm coming. Eliza packed in silence, not with panic, but with a kind of practiced resolve, the way someone might pack for a funeral they knew was long overdue. She moved with calm, steady motions, flashlight, notebook, gloves, her father's pocket knife, and the black key. Jasper leaned in the doorway, arms crossed. Where are you going? She zipped the old duffel. I don't know exactly, but I felt her. A girl. She's inside. Inside what? She met his eyes. The in-between. The attic beneath all attics. He paled. I thought we closed it. So did I. The ember on the mantel pulsed again, twice now, in quick succession, like a warning or a heartbeat. Eliza approached it. The glass was warm. Her reflection shimmered in its curve. But behind her, for a split second, she saw something else. Bookshelves. A dark hallway. A small red door. Her own memory. No, not hers. Nora's. She's still herself, Eliza whispered. But not for long. Do you think you can reach her? Jasper asked. I have to. She took the jar and placed it gently into her bag. It pulsed like a compass now, guiding her not by direction, but by pull. She didn't know where it would take her, only that the attic followed stories. And if it had chosen Nora, then she'd have to go deeper to bring her back. As Eliza stepped outside, a wind rose from nowhere. It rushed down the street, scattering leaves and making the trees groan in unison. Her breath fogged in the early summer heat. She looked at the sky. It was too still. Something had begun. Below, in the corridor of books, Nora wrote and wrote and wrote. Her hand ached, her wrist throbbed, but she couldn't stop. Each line she etched onto the pages that flew before her pushed the shadow back a little further. The collector watched from the corners, flickering like a dying candle flame. Its voice had grown quieter, raspier. You are not the first, it said, but you are the loudest. Nora's pencil was worn to a nub. She was crying now, silently, but her eyes were full of fire. I'm not just a story, she whispered. No, the voice sighed. You are a mirror. And with that, every book on the walls burst open at once, screaming. Thousands of stories, ripped from 1,000 forgotten voices, howled out into the corridor. Pages flew. Names tumbled through the air like falling snow. Eliza Boland, Jasper Finch, Mallory Glass, Harold Lynn, Claire Myers, Nora Myers, and one final chilling name, the Archivist. Nora screamed. The shadow surged forward, and then a door opened. The door stood before Eliza, tall, jagged, and unfamiliar, though it bore the mark she recognized. A small sigil carved in the upper left corner, shaped like a spiral of ink dripping from an open eye. She didn't need the key this time. The jar in her bag pulsed once, then dissolved into ash. That was the price. Her hand reached for the handle on instinct. As she turned it, the door exhaled. Not with wind, but with memory. The scent of her childhood attic washed over her. The musty scent of decaying paper, dried lavender, rusted hinges, and faint smoke. But layered underneath now was something new, something that belonged to Nora. She stepped through. Immediately, the world changed. There was no up or down, only motion. A pull, like gravity, but not tied to direction or space. Her feet struck a floor of shifting parchment. Above, pages fluttered like moths. The air buzzed with voices, and the walls were alive. A hallway formed as she moved forward, constructed from broken storylines and forgotten dreams. Ahead, she saw a flicker of light, sharp and fast, like a match struck in the dark. And then came the voice. Eliza Boland. She turned. The hallway had collapsed into a vast chamber, library and crypt combined. High above, dangling like chandeliers, were books hanging by their spines, pages falling slowly like snow. You wrote your way out once, but now you return to burn. A figure stepped from the far shadows. Not the collector, taller, stranger, clad in robes made of tangled letters and stitched names, its face a pulsing void of ink and teeth. The archivist. Eliza stood her ground. Let the girl go. The archivist tilted its head. She came willingly. She is writing her truth. She feeds me with every word. You're feeding on her soul. No, a pause. Then almost gently, I am preserving it. Behind Eliza, something moved. A flash of blonde hair. Nora, she called. And then she saw her. Nora stood at the end of a long corridor of mirrors, her back turned, scribbling furiously onto the last remaining page in a floating book. Shadows swirled at her feet. Eliza ran. The archivist didn't stop her. It only whispered, "She is almost complete." Eliza reached Nora and grabbed her shoulder. "Nora, stop writing. You're still here. You can come back with me." Nora turned. Her eyes were glazed, her pupils shaped like tiny spirals of ink. Her face was gaunt, streaked with ash. Her voice was a fragile echo. "I don't remember who I was before, but it doesn't matter. I remember everything else." Eliza shook her. "You are Nora. You're not a story. You're a girl. And we need to go." The shadows grew thicker. The archivist stepped forward. "She's mine now." But Eliza's voice was steady. "No, she's herself." She turned to Nora. "You don't have to finish this story. We can write a new one." Nora blinked. For the first time, she looked unsure. The pencil in her hand trembled. And then it snapped in half. The world shuddered. The sound of the pencil snapping echoed like thunder through the impossible library. The floating books above began to twitch violently, some slamming shut, others catching fire midair. Pages spun wildly, carried on a wind that had no origin. The archivist let out a long, low groan that rippled through the walls like an organ played at the wrong pitch. Nora collapsed to her knees, gasping. Her eyes cleared. "Eliza," she whispered, as if tasting her own name for the first time. "I'm here," Eliza said, dropping beside her, shielding her with her arms. "You did it. You broke the hold." The archivist's robe of letters convulsed. Some of the names stitched into its fabric began to peel away, turning to ash as they fell. It reeled backward. "You were meant to remember," it hissed. "All of you. Stories do not end. They consume." "No," Eliza said, helping Nora stand. "Not this one." Together, they turned to the corridor behind them. The mirrors that had once reflected shadows were now empty. Each glass pane shimmered like water, showing glimpses of outside. A bedroom in a small house, a quiet suburban street, a blue sky with drifting clouds. A way out, but the archivist screamed, and the chamber began to collapse. Black ink rained from the ceiling, sizzling as it struck the floor. The walls convulsed inward. The mirror corridor groaned. "We have to run," Eliza said, grabbing Nora's hand. And they ran, down the corridor of glass, each step splintering the illusions further. Shards of memories exploded at their sides. Mallory's diary, Harold's moth collection, the painting that bled, the boy in the basement whispering prayers to something unseen. All of it breaking. Behind them, the archivist pursued, slower now, distorted, its voice reduced to static and anguish. "You cannot erase me. I am memory. I am a page. I am." They leapt through the final mirror. Light engulfed them. Eliza hit the floor first, wood beneath her hands. Familiar. Stable. The attic. Her attic. She looked up. Nora lay beside her, curled up, breathing hard. The air was cool and real. Dusty sunlight filtered through the window, casting long rays across the planks. There was no ink here. No screaming books. Just quiet. A single breeze drifted through the cracked pane. Nora blinked, dazed. "We made it." Eliza nodded, brushing Nora's hair back. "You're safe now." But her eyes moved to the corner of the attic, where a single object now sat. An unopened book, bound in black leather, resting atop a wooden crate. No title. No author. Just one word carved into the spine in shallow letters. "Remember." Nora wouldn't touch the book. She stared at it from across the room, knees drawn to her chest, breathing in the slow, careful rhythm of someone trying not to feel too much at once. "It followed us," she whispered. Eliza sat beside her, staring at the black book on the crate. "Not all of it," she said softly. "Just a piece. Maybe it always leaves one behind." Nora turned her head. "Then why didn't you burn it?" Eliza didn't answer right away. Her hand drifted to her notebook, the one she'd used all her life. Because some stories aren't meant to be destroyed, only understood. A silence settled between them. Downstairs, the house was still. Outside, birds chirped and a lawnmower buzzed somewhere far off, but it felt unreal, like a memory they hadn't earned. Eliza finally stood and approached the book. Her fingers hovered over it. The leather wasn't cold. It breathed. like skin. And when she touched it, her thoughts shuddered. Not words, not images, but sensations. Fear, longing, hope tangled like roots underwater. She flinched and stepped back. Nora's voice behind her. It's not done. Eliza turned. What? Nora pointed to the attic window. The collector, the archivist, they were only part of it. How do you know? I remember now, Nora said. Not everything, but the voices, the others trapped inside. They weren't alone. They were part of something bigger. Something still hungry. Eliza felt the weight of the air shift. Like the house had been listening. We need help, she said. That night, Eliza made a call. It rang 7 times before a voice answered. Old, rasping, half asleep. If you've opened a door that shouldn't be opened, it said without introduction, you've already lost something. Eliza clenched the phone tighter. We closed it. I think. The voice on the other end hummed. You don't call me unless it's unfinished. What did it leave behind? A book. Does it whisper yet? Not yet. There was a long silence. Then, do not read it. Do not write in it. Seal it in a circle of salt and iron. And when it starts to speak, call me again. Eliza swallowed hard. Who are you? The voice chuckled. The one who buried the first archivist. The line went dead. Eliza lowered the phone, her hand trembling slightly. Behind her, Nora stood at the foot of the stairs. Eliza, what? Do you hear that? They both turned. From the attic behind the closed door came the softest, most delicate sound. Pages turning, one by one, slowly. The pages turned for hours. Not by wind, nor by hand. Just the patient rhythm of something waking up. Eliza and Nora slept in the living room that night, curled on the couch, blankets wrapped tight around them. The attic door remained shut. Salt lined the floorboards beneath it, and old nails, hand-forged iron pried from the cellar stairs, had been nailed into the frame. It wouldn't hold forever, but it gave them time. Eliza didn't sleep much. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the mirrors, dozens of them, each holding a version of herself, not quite right. One weeping ink, one smiling with too many teeth, one standing perfectly still while something moved inside her skin. Nora stirred beside her, murmuring in her sleep. No more pages. Eliza sat up. Something had changed. The house was too still. Not silent, still. No clicks, no settling wood, no hum of the refrigerator. Just watching. Then, knock, knock, knock. Not from the front door, from the attic. 3 slow, deliberate knocks on the other side. Eliza jumped to her feet. Nora followed, eyes wide, breath hitching. Don't open it, Nora said. It's not trying to get out. It's trying to get in. In? Eliza echoed. Into what? Nora didn't answer. Instead, she slowly walked to the base of the attic stairs. She crouched, placing her palm against the floor. Then whispered, There's something underneath. Eliza approached. What do you mean? The attic isn't just above us anymore. Her voice shook. It's below too, like it's folding in on itself. She traced her finger along a faint seam in the floorboards. I saw this before, she said. In the corridor with the mirrors. There was a hidden door beneath the mirrors, but I couldn't open it. Eliza stared. A door beneath the floor. She grabbed the flashlight, knelt, and pried with the knife until click. A plank shifted. Beneath it was a dark hole. Not a crawl space. Not a cellar. A black, airless void, lined with paper. Nora recoiled. It's spreading. A single whisper rose from the hole. Not a word. A name. Eliza. The whisper curled out of the hole like a breath too old to belong to anyone living. Eliza. She stumbled back, flashlight shaking in her grip. The beam flickered as if reacting to the name. Her name, spoken from the dark. Nora grabbed her hand. We need to close it. Eliza couldn't look away from a hole. There were pages shifting below. Not loose ones, skin-bound tomes with twitching covers, breathing in sync with the whisper. A stairway of paper began to fold out of the black, forming a narrow descent. Don't, Nora said quickly. It wants you to go down. I know, Eliza murmured. But I've been here before. Nora stared at her. What? Eliza turned slowly. When I was 8, I went missing for 2 hours. No one could find me. Not my parents, not the police. Then they found me asleep in the attic, curled in a box. I didn't remember anything. But after that, the voices started. Nora paled. You were the first to come back, Eliza said. But I think I was the first to leave something behind. The whisper came again, softer. You left the door open. Nora's grip on Eliza's hand tightened. Then we closed it. For good. They gathered everything they could. Salt, rope, nails, the iron pendulum from the grandfather clock. Nora etched protective runes into the floor using the burnt end of an old paintbrush. Eliza poured a line of salt around the open hole, careful not to let the powder break. The books below stirred angrily. Whatever's in there, Nora said, voice hardening, it doesn't get to keep you. But just as Eliza reached forward to sprinkle the final pinch, a hand reached out, not skeletal, not monstrous, but child's hand, small, pale, shaking, and clutching her old notebook, the one she'd lost years ago, the one her mother had said must have been thrown away. Eliza froze. Then a face rose behind the hand. It was her, 8 years old, dirty, wild-eyed, tearful. Eliza, the child whispered, I'm still down here. I've been waiting. Nora screamed, pulling her back. The salt line broke. The hand gripped the edge of the floor, and the attic inverted. The attic twisted. The ceiling cracked open, not upward but down, as though the house itself had become a sheet of paper, folding inward. The light from a flashlight was swallowed whole, and the boundaries of space came undone. Nora screamed as the floor dropped beneath them. But there was no impact, no falling sensation, only the disorienting weightlessness of being unwritten. They landed together, gasping. Except they hadn't landed in the attic. The air was wrong, stale, old, dense with the smell of mildew and wax. The walls weren't wood anymore, but faded wallpaper covered in tiny flowers, peeling in slow curls. The only sound was the ticking of a metronome. Eliza, Nora whispered, grabbing her arm. Where are we? Eliza turned in a circle, her breath caught in her throat. I think, she said, this is my old bedroom. Everything was smaller. The bed had pink sheets with cartoon stars. A dollhouse sat in the corner, partially crushed. There was a chalk drawing of a sun on one wall, but its rays were bent inward. Her younger self stood in the far corner. The girl didn't blink. Her eyes were dark, rimmed in black shadow, and in her arms she still clutched the worn notebook. You said you'd come back, the child said. I didn't know, Eliza said quietly, stepping forward. I didn't remember. The child's face cracked, not with emotion, but literally. Fine lines spidered across her skin like broken porcelain. Ink bled through the cracks. You forgot me, the girl said. You left me here with it. Nora tried to move, but her feet stuck to the floor. The room tilted again, walls stretching, elongating, as if the house was trying to become a memory it could never fully recall. A bookshelf in the corner toppled, spilling books that screamed as they hit the floor. You made a bargain, the child whispered. I was 8. You wrote in the book. Eliza's breath caught. I didn't. You did. You wrote what you wanted to forget. You fed it, and it kept me instead. Behind the child, something moved. A towering figure. Not the archivist. This was worse. Tall, blank-faced, with empty eye sockets and limbs of stacked paper. Dozens of hands folded together into long arms. It didn't walk. It slid. Eliza reached for Nora. We have to go. The child turned slowly to the figure behind her. It's hungry again, she said. And then the metronome stopped. The silence after the metronome stopped was deafening. Not just quiet, wrong. Like a sound had been subtracted from the world. The ink-bleeding child turned toward the looming paper-limbed figure and whispered, She's here now. You can take her instead. Eliza froze. No das chauti. No, we're leaving. But the room wouldn't let them move. The floor stretched out like soft rubber, refusing to hold shape. The door behind them twisted into a spiral of wood and teeth, and the windows looked out into a library filled with shifting shadows. The creature stepped forward, gliding. Its joints groaned with the crackling of parchment rubbed raw. Hands unfurled across its arms like bookmarks coming loose. each one shaking slightly as if straining to grasp something long forgotten. You fed it, the child whispered. Only wanted to forget the bad parts. But the book doesn't care why you write. Only that you do. Eliza's eyes filled with tears. I didn't know. I just wanted to forget my father yelling. The bruises. The nights I cried and no one came. I didn't think. The child shrieked and the sound twisted the walls. You fed it your pain. You wrote it all down. And it took me instead of your memories. The creature lunged. Not fast, inevitable. Nora grabbed a fallen book from the shelf and hurled it. It vanished midair, swallowed by the air itself. She turned to Eliza, desperation in her voice. If this is your memory, you can rewrite it. You can change it. Eliza looked down at the notebook in the child's hands. Her notebook, the one she'd filled with everything she wanted to forget. If I take it back, you can make a new story, Nora said. The child hugged the book tighter. Her body cracked further. You'll leave me again, she said. Eliza stepped forward slowly. I don't have to. We can finish the story together. The child hesitated. Behind her, the creature opened its mouth, not to roar, but to reveal more books, row after row of open stories stitched into its throat. Eliza saw names written on the spines. Some she knew, some she didn't. Some weren't names at all, but dates. Her birth date was there. Please, Eliza said, kneeling before the child, give it back. The girl's cracked hands trembled. Then, slowly, she offered the notebook forward. Eliza took it. As soon as her fingers touched the cover, everything shattered. The room fractured into paper, ink, light. The walls burst into words. The creature let out a final groaning sigh and folded inward, layer by layer, until it was gone. Nora collapsed to the floor. Eliza stood in a storm of words, holding the book. It was blank. The story wasn't over yet. The paper storm settled around them like snow. Pages floated to the ground, curling and yellowing before they touched the floorboards. Eliza blinked. Floorboards. Real ones. Old, dusty, creaking under her knees. They were back in the attic. Nora lay beside her, breathing hard, clutching her ribs. Her eyes flicked open. Did we make it? Eliza nodded slowly, still gripping the notebook. Its once faded cover was now dark and smooth, warm to the touch like living skin. When she opened it, the pages were clean, but only for a moment. As she turned to the middle of the book, her heart stopped. New writing was appearing. Faint, as if sketched in breath, but growing darker with every second. She returned with the book, but the house remembered more than she did. Nora saw it too. It's writing itself again. Eliza turned to the back. Page after page filled with lines, her own thoughts, her memories, and things she had never written. The girl behind the wall still watches. The door will never stay closed. What was taken once will be taken again. A line scrawled itself across the bottom of the last page. Let me out. Eliza slammed the book shut. The attic door creaked open on its own. She turned toward it, heart pounding. Downstairs, the house no longer groaned or whispered, but it breathed. Every window fogged with condensation from inside. Dust rose and fell like a pulse. And in the far end of the hallway, near the bottom of the attic stairs, was a mirror. Her mirror, the one she remembered breaking when she was 10. The one that had cut her hand. It was whole again. Eliza stepped closer, notebook clutched against her chest. Her reflection was unchanged until Nora joined her. Then, the mirrored version of Nora didn't move, didn't blink, didn't breathe. Eliza, Nora whispered. That's not me. The reflection of Nora slowly raised one hand and pointed at Eliza. Then the attic door slammed shut, trapping them inside again. The notebook in Eliza's hands burst open. The pages flipped wildly. One by one, images appeared, drawings made in a child's hand. Crude, black crayon depictions of the house, the attic, the staircase. And then one final image. 2 girls standing in the attic, surrounded by mirrors that show no reflections. And beneath it, written in trembling script, this isn't the end. The lights flickered. The house exhaled, and something upstairs began to walk again. The sound from above was wrong. Not footsteps, rehearsals. Over and over again, slow, dragging thuds, followed by a single knock, then silence. They would repeat, like someone practicing how to descend from the attic without being heard. Eliza stepped away from the mirror. "We didn't fix it," Nora said, voice trembling. "We only brought it forward. The house isn't haunted by the past. It's haunted by what we never finished." The notebook trembled in Eliza's hands, its cover warming again. More words scrawled onto the page. "You looked away. That's why it grew teeth." Eliza's throat went dry. She stared at the sentence, willing it to fade, to mean nothing. But she knew exactly what it referred to. The night she first heard the whispers under her bed. The night she pulled the covers over her head and promised herself, "If I don't look, it can't be real." But it was. She remembered the click of nails beneath the mattress. The breath that smelled like ash. The voice that whispered. "Trade." Nora turned to her. "What if it's not just the house?" "What do you mean? What if it followed you from somewhere else? What if the house just became its vessel because you gave it the first story?" Eliza's hand tightened on the notebook. She remembered the blank pages when she was little, how she filled them in one by one. The story she wrote was a horror story, made up, she thought. A girl in a house with something in the walls. She even gave it a name. The Watcher in the Wood. "I wrote it," Eliza said, "when I was 8. I thought I was just playing." Nora looked horrified. "You named it." Eliza opened the notebook to the first page. Her old handwriting greeted her in crooked letters. "The Watcher waits where stories sleep. If you speak its name, it watches deep." Below that, fresh ink bled through. You spoke it again. From the far wall, a mirror cracked. A long, jagged line ran down its center. And from that crack, something stepped out. It had Eliza's face, but the eyes were empty. The arms were too long, and the smile, thin and wet, was carved too wide to be real. "Hello, Eliza," it whispered, voice overlapping with a dozen versions of her own. "Don't say anything," Nora said. Eliza clutched the notebook, backing up. "I didn't know it was real." The doppelganger tilted its head. "It doesn't matter anymore." Then it lunged. The doppelganger moved like smoke in broken memory, flickering from one spot to another without walking, as if the attic itself couldn't remember where it should be. One moment, it was in the cracked mirror. The next, it was at Nora's side, fingers brushing her hair like wind. She screamed and struck out. Her fist meant nothing. "Eliza," she shouted, backing toward the attic ladder. "We have to go." But the notebook burned hot in Eliza's hands. She stared at the thing, herself but not. A version of her born from everything she'd written down and tried to forget. Its face was almost right, almost human, almost Eliza, but its teeth were made of letters. When it smiled again, Eliza saw that they were forming words, changing with every breath it took. "Let me finish your story." It opened its mouth wider, jaw unhinging like a snake. The attic tilted again. "No," Eliza said, clutching the notebook to her chest. "This is mine." She turned to a blank page. The creature hissed, backing away slightly. Its shape flickered. "You can't write without me," it whispered. "You gave me the pen." Nora grabbed the flashlight from the floor and swept the beam across the attic. The light struck a shape on the far wall, another mirror. This one wasn't cracked, but it showed a room that didn't exist. Not this attic, not even this house. It was a white space, filled with shelves and thousands of floating notebooks. In the center was a chair. In the chair sat a girl, scribbling endlessly. It was the child again, Eliza's younger self, and she was writing more creatures. "Oh my God," Nora breathed. "That version of you never stopped." Eliza turned to the doppelganger. "You were never real. I just imagined you." The creature's voice changed, her father's voice now, deep and sharp like a snapped ruler. "You imagine a lot of things. That doesn't make them go away. I made you," Eliza said. "I can end you." The notebook pulsed. Her pen felt heavy in her pocket, like a knife. She pulled it out and wrote across the next page in shaking script. The Watcher faded when the light returned. Nora clicked the flashlight to high beam and shined it into the creature's face. It screamed, not like a person but like burning paper. Its skin blistered and peeled into letters. Its mouth poured ink that steamed when it hit the floor. "You're just a story," Eliza cried. She wrote again. It tried to stay, but stories need readers. And she stopped reading. The creature convulsed. Its limbs curled inward like paper curling in fire. Mirrors shattered all around them, releasing flutters of blank pages. The attic darkened, then brightened, as if breathing in relief. And the creature was gone. Only silence remained. The attic exhaled, not just metaphorically. Actually, dust rose in soft spirals, stirred by a breath that came from nowhere and everywhere. Nora collapsed to her knees, shaking. Eliza stood frozen. The notebook pressed to her chest like a lifeline. The pen clenched so tight in her fingers her knuckles had gone bloodless. They waited. No footsteps. No whispers. No teeth behind glass. Just silence. "Did we do it?" Nora finally asked, voice barely audible. Eliza didn't answer. Her gaze was fixed on the spot where the doppelganger had collapsed into a puddle of ink and letters. The puddle was gone now, but something had been left in its place. A page. Not torn, not burned, but offered. She reached for it slowly, sensing heat pulsing beneath the wood. As her fingers closed around it, her ears filled with whispers, brief and slurred, as if underwater. "Last page, don't read it aloud." She snapped her hand back, heart lurching. "It's not over." Nora looked up. "You wrote an ending. You said it was fading." Eliza shook her head. "That wasn't the real story. That was my fear. I wrote it out. But there's more beneath that." She turned the page over and gasped. It wasn't paper. It was skin. Pale, almost translucent. Ink shimmered faintly across it in spiraling calligraphy, impossible to read in full, like the letters twisted when looked at directly. "What the hell is that?" Nora whispered, backing away. "I don't know." Eliza's voice was hollow. "But I think this house isn't just haunted by memories. I think it's haunted by unfinished stories. Not just mine. Everyone who's ever lived here." They turned as the floor creaked. The attic ladder, untouched for hours, slowly lowered itself. "Nope," Nora said, already grabbing her bag. "We are not doing round two." But Eliza hesitated. Her eyes had caught something on the far wall, something she hadn't noticed before. A tiny door, maybe 2 feet high, no taller than a child's knees, hidden behind a tapestry of nailed-down pages. She stepped toward it. "Eliza," Nora warned. "It's the real attic. The first one. The one the house was built around." She knelt, pulling away the paper. The little door wasn't wood. It was iron, cold to the touch, sealed with no visible hinge. And carved into it was a name. Not hers. Not her father's. A name she didn't recognize. But something about it rang inside her bones. "Archivist." "Eliza," Nora hissed, "leave it shut." Eliza ran her fingers over the name. The notebook pulsed again, and from behind the iron door, a voice, childlike, polite, and terribly sad, whispered, "You found me." Then a metallic click echoed. The door creaked open by itself. Inside was another notebook, bound in black cloth, and bleeding. The bleeding notebook sat in a cradle of crumbling wood and bone. Real bone, small, childlike finger bones, arranged as though they'd once held the book and then been absorbed into the house's architecture. The black cloth binding it shimmered slightly, like oil and water, and where the ink had bled onto the floor beneath it, the wood sank. Not warped. Sank. As if the book had weight far beyond its size. "Eliza, don't," Nora whispered from behind. "We've already gone too far. We finished it. We ended it. Whatever that is, it's not part of your story." "That's the thing," Eliza said, her voice slow, distant. "I don't think it's mine." She picked it up. The attic groaned in response. The room tilted slightly, not from foundation shift, but from narrative shift. The reality of the space changed. Light flickered, not from any bulb, but from old lanterns that hadn't been there before. Cobwebs vanished from one corner, only to bloom in another. Time hiccuped, and the book opened. She didn't turn it. It moved itself. The first page was blank. Then writing began to etch itself into the fabric of the paper. Not ink, but scratched thought. A story started forming in a strange, looping hand. The archivist never died. They were written away. To find the end, you must forget your beginning. Eliza frowned. This isn't just a ghost story. The attic was no longer quiet. A creaking rose from the walls, a low chorus of voices reading together. Pages began to slide across the walls, peeling off one by one. Each bore scenes neither girl recognized. Moments from other lives, other children, other stories. A girl in the 1940s hiding in a wardrobe. A boy in the 1800s burying a tooth under the stairs. A woman in the 1970s holding a photograph that showed her face missing. All here, all trapped. Nora watched in horror. These are other kids. Eliza nodded, transfixed. Other writers. Other stories. She flipped ahead in the bleeding book. A name appeared halfway through. Clara Highworth. Age 9. A date. 1887. A note scribbled beneath it in childish handwriting. He says I can leave if I give him one story for each night. But I don't want any more. Then, beneath that in sharper adult script, she stopped writing. So now she is the story. Eliza's hand trembled. This house isn't haunted at all. Nora looked at her. What is it then? It's a library. A collection. The notebook pulsed again. Pages began ripping free of the attic walls, circling the girls like leaves in a storm. Words screamed silently from their surfaces. And from a hole where the little iron door had been, a hand emerged. It was small, pale, but not skeletal. It belonged to a child. Then another hand. Then a head. A little boy climbed out from the darkness, no more than 7 years old, wearing clothes 50 years out of date. He looked up at them with hollow eyes and said softly, "Are you the next archivist?" Eliza couldn't speak, because on the next page of the book was her name. Eliza stared at her name, written in her own handwriting, but she hadn't written it. Below it, a single line had been scratched with such force the page was torn. If she reads to the end, she will forget the beginning. The boy stood just inside the iron doorway, waiting. He wore no shoes, his bare feet streaked with ink that seemed to bleed from his shadow. His mouth moved as though whispering, but no sound came out. Only the rustle of unseen pages, flapping like wings somewhere in the darkness behind him. Nora was shaking. "We need to leave. Right now." "I don't think we can," Eliza murmured. "Not until this ends." The boy turned and walked back into the passage. The light from the attic didn't follow him, but the book in Eliza's hands did. Each step the child took drew another page out of the book, fluttering behind him and stitching itself into the walls of the narrow corridor. The walls themselves began to form from the story, ink transforming into old stone, brick wood. And the deeper they went, the more the house changed. It wasn't just a house anymore. It was a narrative labyrinth. Nora followed reluctantly, staying close behind. "Where is he taking us?" "Not where," Eliza said. "When—" They passed the door. Through its frosted glass, Eliza glimpsed a little girl hunched over a desk in candlelight, scribbling furiously into a torn notebook. Her lips moved soundlessly. A shadow loomed behind her, but not a person. A silhouette with too many arms, coiling around her like ink in water. Nora saw it too. "That's Clara," from a page. Another door opened itself. Inside, a boy crouched beneath floorboards, holding a sharpened pencil like a knife. Scratched into the wood above him were the words, "He's in the margins now." Then the boy's eyes snapped up and locked with Eliza's. He smiled, and the door slammed shut. They kept walking, the corridor now stretching impossibly far beneath the house. The path forked, then forked again. Every time Eliza glanced back, the hallway behind them had changed. New wallpaper, new doors, whispers in different voices. "Where is he?" Nora whispered. Eliza turned the next page of the bleeding book. There was an illustration now, drawn in thick, erratic strokes. It showed two girls, one holding a book, the other fading into mist. Behind them loomed a massive shape with no face, only 1,000 open eyes. Beneath the drawing, more words had appeared. One writes, one remembers, one disappears. Suddenly the boy stopped. They had reached a large circular room, built entirely of stories. The walls were book spines. The ceiling, a dome of scrawled handwriting. In the center stood a pedestal, and resting on it, bound in skin and ink, was the archivist's journal. The boy turned to Eliza. "You have to finish it," he said softly. "Finish what?" "My story. Clarice. All of them. The ones left open. The ones forgotten." Nora backed away. No, Eliza, don't even touch that thing." But Eliza was already stepping forward. "I think I already have," she whispered. And the journal opened itself to the next blank page, with her face staring up from it. The page wasn't just showing her face, it was mirroring her. Eliza leaned closer, and the image blinked in time with her, its mouth quivering as if wanting to speak. But when she touched it, the reflection bled. Thick, black ink oozed from her printed eyes and ran down the page like tears. Nora pulled her back. "This place isn't real. It's a story loop, like a trap made of plot." Eliza turned slowly, the journal still open in her hands. "Then how do we escape? We're surrounded by unfinished endings, broken chapters, and characters no one remembers. If I don't write, we're stuck. If I do write, I could become part of it. Let's burn it. The whole thing. We're too deep. The fire wouldn't reach the real attic from here." The boy stepped forward, ink still dripping from his feet. "It has to end the same way it began. With truth." Eliza frowned. "What truth?" He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, yellowed photograph. Her father, but young, maybe 12, standing in the attic. Behind him, the iron door was open. In the photo, he was holding a black book, the same one. Nora gasped. "Your dad. He was the last archivist." Eliza flipped through the journal again, faster now. Names passed by in a blur. Stories, each punctuated by a final line. Some hopeful, some horrific. Then she found it, a story titled, "The Silence of Graham Holt." She read aloud. He thought he could contain it by forgetting. He sealed the attic. He'd buried the journal. But stories don't die just because we stop reading them. They wait. She lowered the book slowly. He knew. My whole life he knew. The boy nodded. He escaped, but didn't finish it. Eliza stepped up to the pedestal. The book burned cold in her hands now, each page a frozen whisper against her fingertips. She turned to the blank one with her face. The ink began forming new words. She came seeking answers, but brought a story of her own, one that bled through the walls and woke the house. Nora whispered, "Don't let it trap you." But Eliza wasn't writing it. The book was writing her. She was the daughter of the man who ran. So she returned, and returned, and returned. The words looped. Eliza stepped back in horror. It's a recursive trap. Every archivist is chosen because they're connected to the last. The story is bloodbound. The boy's smile faded. "You're not just supposed to finish it," he said. "You're supposed to become it." The journal snapped shut in her hands, cutting off a final scream echoing from the pages. All around them, the bookshelves groaned. The stories began to slide open like doors. From within them, the forgotten came crawling. Not zombies, not ghosts, unfinished characters. A girl missing half her outline. A man made entirely of dialogue tags. A child whose eyes were quotation marks, flickering. They all turned toward Eliza and began to read her. They read her with mouths that didn't move, but with eyes, hundreds of eyes, that flicked back and forth as though scanning a page. Eliza staggered back as their stares tore through her like blades made of storylines. Each forgotten character, malformed by abandonment and absence, projected a piece of their unfinished narrative onto her. "She will inherit our endings," whispered a headless girl stitched with question marks. "She'll write until there's nothing left of herself," said a man with no spine, words printed across his skin like tattoos. Nora lunged, grabbing Eliza's arm. "Snap out of it," she cried. "That thing is trying to overwrite you." But Eliza's voice was calm, almost too calm. "No, I understand now." Her pupils had become tiny paragraphs. The attic doesn't haunt people. It collects them. It collects their stories, unfinished, unwritten, forgotten. That's why it needed someone like me. Then drop the book. Nora shouted, "I can't." Eliza held up the journal. "It's writing the ending right now. And if I stop it," her lips trembled, "we all stay here, forever, trapped in stories without final pages." Nora turned to the boy. How do we end it? He said nothing, but then he stepped into one of the bookshelves, into the spine of story, and disappeared. A flickering shape remained behind, a shadow that wasn't his. Then, from behind them, a familiar voice echoed. Eliza. She turned. Her father stood in the doorway, older, eyes sunken. But it wasn't him. Not really. This was the version of him the attic had kept. The version who had once been the archivist. You have to close the book, he said gently. You have to finish the story. I don't know how, Eliza whispered. You already do. You've written it all your life. The endings no one else would. This place isn't a prison. It's a reader's graveyard. The only way to escape is to give them closure. The characters surged forward again, surrounding them. Eliza raised the journal. I'll finish you all, she said, voice shaking. I'll give every story its end. She turned the page. The characters paused, and then, one by one, she spoke their names and wrote. The girl with the stitched mouth found her voice. The boy under the floorboards was rescued. The woman in the photograph was remembered. Each time she finished a story, the character dissolved into golden dust, disappearing with a soft breath, a whisper of gratitude. But with each story, a part of Eliza faded, too. Her reflection in the bleeding pages dulled. Her heartbeat slowed. Nora clung to her. No, don't give yourself to them. You don't have to write forever. Eliza smiled faintly. It's okay. Someone has to end it. The last page turned. Only one story remained. Hers. She picked up the pen and wrote. Eliza Holt walked out of the attic, leaving the stories behind. But not forgotten. Never forgotten. As a final word hit the page, the entire house shook. Books burst into flame. Not destruction, but release. The labyrinth walls collapsed, becoming mere floorboards again, and the iron door slammed shut. Eliza collapsed in Nora's arms, the journal now blank. Sunlight broke through the attic window. For the first time, in what felt like lifetimes, it was morning. Epilogue. Years later, a new book appeared in the local library's donation box. Its title was embossed in deep crimson. The Whispering Room, Collected Endings. By H. No one knew who left it, but those who read it reported strange dreams. Dreams of dusty attics, of unfinished stories, and of a girl who smiled sadly as she turned the last page.